Hi, my name is Davor from the Sweet Tech TV, and today we're going to talk about the evolution of mobile phone technology. Let's get into it.
For this video, we've partnered with Red Bull Slovenia for a giveaway. Stay tuned till the end of the video to get more info.
No.
This is part 2 in the evolution of mobile phone tech. In the smartphone era, part 2, the pre-smartphone era, was uploaded a few days ago, so be sure to check it out. It will be in a batch on the top of this video. And now we finally move on to 2007, the year mobile tech changed forever.
An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. Here it is.
On January 9th, Steve Jobs, the CEO of Apple at the time, introduced the first iPhone. It weighed only about 115 grams, had a 3.5-inch LCD touchscreen display with OS X, or later named iOS 1. It didn't even have an app store, so it came with pre-installed apps only. It was a revolutionary phone and made Apple popular as it is today over the globe. This was also the year that the first phone with the micro USB charger was released, the Nokia 5310. A year later, in 2008, the 3G version of the iPhone was released, and it was also the first phone that supported the App Store. Also, HTC released the HTC Dream, also known as the first phone that had the Android OS. In 2009, 4G was first introduced with LTE in Oslo and Stockholm. LTE offered speeds a lot faster than H+, even up to 300 megabits per second. The first phone to use 4G LTE was the Samsung Galaxy Indulge in 2011. Soon after that, it became the standard data speeds. In 2010, Samsung released the first Samsung Galaxy S series device. It had Android 1.6 with Google Apps pre-installed, but it didn't offer any app stores, so you couldn't download any apps. Apple released the iPhone 4, the first phone with a front-facing camera.
Hey, Johnny.
In 2011, Samsung released the first Galaxy Note device with the S Pen. It was a big device for its time, with a Super HD AMOLED 5.3-inch display and labeled as a power user phone. The S Pen was a stylus stored in the bottom right part of the phone, and it was introduced as a way to help users with the use of the phone. It was nicknamed the Phablet because it was so big. Also this year, the first Nokia Windows Phone was released. Both the mid-range Lumia 710 and the high-end Lumia 800. In 2012, there were a few iterative upgrades like the Samsung S3 with a bigger screen and a new Android version. It was also the year iPhone released the iPhone 5 with a more compact design, and it first featured the proprietary lightning cable option instead of the 30-pin charger it had before. LG also introduced the LG Optimus G, a very popular device that sold very fast at the time. In 2013, LG released the first Nexus phone, the LG Nexus 5. It was the first phone that featured a direct collaboration with Google and a line that would be on the market until the first Pixel phones. A year later, Samsung released the S5, the first flagship Samsung device with an IP rating, even though it was plastic. It featured Android 4.4.2 and a TouchWiz screen that was optimized to be even more similar to the stock Android look. It also had a slide-down fingerprint scanner in the home button. It was also the year Apple released the first Plus model phone, the 6 Plus, with a metal and a curvier design than previous phones. 2015 was the year that saw the rise of lesser-known Chinese companies like Huawei, Xiaomi, and OnePlus in the Western market. Huawei released the P8, a phone that had a smaller price than other similarly spec'd phones. Xiaomi released the first Mi Note device, but was still not as well known and optimized for the Western market as Huawei. OnePlus released the OnePlus 2. That phone sold 30,000 units in China within 64 seconds after launch. Also that year, Samsung released the first phone with a metal frame and the first phone with a curved edge. The phones were from the S6 line and were also the first Samsung phones to support Qi wireless charging at 5 watts. And then at the end of 2015, the first phone with a USB Type-C charger was introduced by a Chinese company LE, and the phone was named the LE1. Then in 2016, Huawei released the P9, the first phone in collaboration with Leica. The cameras were one at the best of the time, and the collaboration is still ongoing even with the current P40 line. Apple released the iPhone 7 line, which was highly criticized as it was the first phone with no 3.5mm headphone jack in the last decade, so you could only use the headphones wirelessly or through the Lightning port. At the time, the change was made to make room for a bigger battery, or at least that's what they said. In 2017, Samsung released the S8 series, the first Samsung series without a physical home button and a screen from almost top to bottom. So the navigation keys were implemented through the software. Apple released the 10th anniversary iPhone, the iPhone 10 or iPhone X as some call it. It had even less bezels and implemented the notch design. Because it had so little bezels, they removed Touch ID and implemented Face ID. Google released the first Pixel phone at the start of the year. It was the first phone with Google Assistant implemented directly into the phone, and it was a feature that only the phone had. LG released the V30, one of the first phones with ultra-wide lens. In 2018, even more budget companies emerged. The likes of Realme, Oppo, Vivo started making better phones that were more suited for the Western market and had interesting designs, like the Vivo Nexus, that was one of the first phones with a pop-up selfie camera. Xiaomi released the famed Poco Phone F1, the phone that had similar specs as the flagship phones for almost a third of the price. It was deemed the next flagship killer, even beating OnePlus at its own game. Apple released kind of a budget flagship device, the iPhone XR. It was cheap for flagship iPhones and similarly spec'd to the XS line. It had an LCD display instead of an AMOLED and only one camera lens. This was also the year that Samsung started making better mid-range phones, since the competition forced them into it. One of the most popular mid-range phones of that year from Samsung were the A7 and the A9 that introduced 4 camera lenses to the phone. Last year, some major countries started folding out 5G. It was mostly the mid-band 5G that was deployed, with a few millimeter wave test stations being set around the world. Millimeter 5G is the fastest, with speeds going up from 1 to 2 gigabits per second. Then mid-band 5G is allowing speeds up to 400 megabits per second. Last year was also the first year that foldable phones were released. The first one was the Royole FlexPi, but most people didn't really like it, as it didn't seem very sturdy and the software wasn't really optimized. The next foldable phone was the Galaxy Fold, with a big screen tucked away on the inside and a small screen on the outside. The phone had some problems with its screen protector being peeled off and damaging it so much it didn't even work. But they fixed it later in the year, and the fixed version was re-released in the fall. Huawei also made a foldable phone with a screen on the outside, the Mate X. More and more companies also started putting more lenses on smartphones. The attack of the cameras, like Mr. Who the Boss put it. Almost all mid-range and flagship phones now have 3 lenses: the main lens, telephoto lens, and the ultra-wide. And now we're also in the middle of the race for the megapixels. Last year, Xiaomi was the first to introduce a phone with a 108 megapixel camera lens on the phone, the Xiaomi Note 10, and the price tag was only around 500 euros. Last year was also a bad year for Huawei, since the US started a ban towards Chinese companies. That ban really affected Huawei, since the phones can't come pre-installed with Google Play services, and it now only has its own app gallery. The first big phone that came without Google Play services was the Mate 30 Pro in the fall. Then there's this year. A lot has already happened, like Samsung released the S20 lineup. Shameless plug. You can check out the S20 Plus camera comparison to the iPhone 11 Pro Max in our previous video. The biggest phone of the S20 lineup was the S20 Ultra, with a big emphasis on camera, as it also had a 108 megapixel main camera, but it had some autofocus issues in the video at the start. Motorola released the first smartphone that flipped like phones in the old days, but when the Samsung released the Galaxy Z Flip, many comparisons showed that the Z Flip looked like it was built better. At least the Motorola Razr had a small screen on the outside that could give you more space to operate. And also, Huawei recently announced the P40 series that's gonna come without the Google Play services and is set to start selling this week here in Slovenia. So still, a lot is probably gonna happen in 2020 regarding mobile tech. We'll try to cover most of it by talking about some rumors and things that are gonna happen on the market. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video, so you'll catch all the videos we'll make. And make sure to also watch our previous videos. Now more info on the giveaway. Like I said, we've partnered with Red Bull Slovenia for this video. They've given us 6 4-packs of Red Bull, and so we decided to make a quiz to share them to get you that little bit of energy for those home workouts. There's a link to the quiz in the description and in the pinned comment. The quiz will be open till Sunday, April 12th at noon. The 6 winners will be announced randomly from people who answer all the questions in the quiz correctly. So click on the link in the description to have a chance at the free Red Bull 4-pack.
I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, comment, like, subscribe, and hope to see you in the next one. Bye.